Mister, please. Is there anybody in this whole damn town who'll help us?
4 men, soaked, leather vests, tattooed arms, beards dripping rain. Behind them, 4 dead Harleys. Behind that, 6 closed doors. Booker Tate, 68, $43 in his cash box. A bank notice that said Tuesday.
Sir, we got turned away everywhere. Cops told us move along. My brother's sick.
How sick?
Heart. He needs to sit down now.
Booker glanced back. Hattie was already in the doorway, dish towel in hand.
Come in, Booker there. I see what they are. Bring them in.
The biker's voice cracked.
Ma'am, 5 doors said no.
Booker just nodded.
This one says yes, boy. Come on.
5 days later, 60 Harleys would roll up that same driveway, and the Tate name would be carried across 4 states. 48 hours before those 4 men knocked on his door, Booker Tate was doing what he'd done every morning for 43 years. He flipped the open sign at 5 a.m., touched the corner of his father's photo above the workbench, whispered, "Morning, Daddy." Then he went next door to kiss his wife. Hattie was already at the griddle, apron tied, coffee on, the smell of biscuits and bacon drifting out into the gray Ohio morning. "Morning, sugar." "Morning, baby. Sleep all right?" Roof leaked again. "I know. Heard the bucket." She handed him a mug without looking up. They'd done this for 43 years. They didn't need to look anymore. The Tate property sat on Route 9, 4 miles outside Glenboro. 2 old buildings and a tired little house behind them. Tate's garage on one side, built by Booker's father Ezekiel in 1954. Hattie's pantry on the other, added in '82 when Hattie quit the diner in town to be near her husband. A narrow breezeway connected them. They ate lunch there together every single day at noon. 2 mugs, 2 plates, 43 years. It was a life. A small, quiet, honest life. And it was about to end. The bank notice had been on Booker's desk for 2 months. He kept turning it face down. Hattie kept pretending not to see him turn it face down. Tuesday was the deadline. Booker counted the cash box that morning. $43. 2 singles, a 5, 3 tens, a worn-out 50 he'd been saving in case the truck needed a new battery. He closed the box, looked at his hands. These hands had rebuilt 3,000 engines. These hands had splinted a child's broken wrist once when a family broke down outside the shop in a thunderstorm. These hands had buried his mother, his father, and his only son. Now these hands were going to hand over the keys. He didn't tell Hattie that yet. She knew. She always knew. But neither of them was ready to say it out loud. The chain auto shop 2 miles up Route 9 had been bleeding their customers for a decade. Slick signs, coupon books, a loyalty app on the phone. The young folks didn't know what a master mechanic was anymore. They knew what a 15% off sticker was. Booker had 3 regulars left. Mrs. Hollister, whose husband had passed in spring. The Peterson kids, who brought their daddy's old truck in on Sundays. And Russ, from the gas station up the road, who came in once a month for an oil change and stayed for biscuits. That was it. That was the whole business. Hattie's pantry did a little better. Truckers stopped for her sweet tea, which was famous all the way to Cleveland. But not enough better. She kept a tin on the counter that read, "Coffee. Pay what you can." Most days, she lost money on that tin. Some days, she didn't. Some days, a trucker would drop a 20 in and walk out before she could give change. That was Hattie. She gave the coffee before she counted the coins. 2 truckers came in at 5:15 for biscuits. Friendly fellas. Knew Booker's name. Paid. Left. After the door swung shut, Booker said quietly, "You notice how that one always waits for the other to pay?" Hattie didn't look up. My daddy used to say, "You learn who folks are by how they pay you." or how they don't. He said a lot of things, your daddy. He did. Booker drank his coffee. Hattie wiped the counter. Neither of them said the other thing. The thing Ezekiel used to say back in 1962 about being a black mechanic in a town that wouldn't let him buy a sandwich at the diner across the street. They didn't need to say it. Some things sit in the quiet between two people who've been married 43 years. The hardest part of the morning came at 7. Their granddaughter, Naomi, came by before school. 17 years old, top of her class, built a working hydraulic engine for the science fair when she was 13. A week ago, the letter had come. Purdue University, College of Engineering. Admitted. She'd run down Route 9 holding that letter like it was a baby bird. Booker had cried right there in the garage, grease still on his hands. The tuition was $41,000 a year. They had $43 in the cash box and a bank notice that said Tuesday. Naomi didn't know about the notice. Hattie had made it clear. She won't hear it from me, baby. Not till after she signs whatever she needs to sign. She's going to fight for it. Let her fight for it. So that morning, Naomi sat at the counter eating a biscuit, talking about thermodynamics, and Booker sat across from her smiling, hand on his coffee mug, the lie of the morning weighing 40 pounds in his chest. Hattie watched him from the griddle. Their eyes met once. She just shook her head slow. Don't, baby. Not yet. He nodded, bit his biscuit, kept smiling. That was a Thursday. By Saturday afternoon, the rain would start. By Saturday evening, 4 soaked strangers would be standing in his driveway. And by Sunday morning, the whole shape of their lives would begin to bend. The rain started Saturday at noon. Not Ohio rain, the kind that comes hard for 20 minutes and quits. This was the other kind, the kind that doesn't stop. The kind that fills the ditches by 2 o'clock and turns the low spots on Route 9 into rivers by 3. By 4, the tornado watch was running on the radio every 15 minutes. By 5, Hattie had pulled in her open sign and was wiping down the counter for the day. The pantry hadn't seen a customer since lunch. Booker stood in the bay door watching the rain come sideways across the lot. He had a transmission half apart on the bench for a job that would pay him $80. The customer wasn't coming today. The customer probably wasn't coming Monday either. He was about to flip his own sign and walk over to the pantry for an early supper when he heard the sound. Not engines, not the high, clean whine of a passenger car. Something heavier, lower, wet. 4 motorcycles. Pushed, not ridden. He couldn't see them yet. They were still half a mile down the road, just shapes in the gray sheet of rain. But he could hear the click, click, click of dead chains. 4 men leaning into 4 big bikes, walking them up the shoulder of Route 9 like men pushing dead bodies. He didn't know then what had happened. He'd find out later, in pieces, from the men themselves. About a mile back, the road dipped into a hollow where a creek ran under a low concrete bridge. By noon, that hollow was a lake. By the time the 4 bikers came over the rise and saw it, the water was 9 inches deep across the road and rising. The lead rider, a man called Diesel, big as a barn door, had eased his Harley down into the water at 3 miles an hour, trying to walk it across. Custom Harley, $2,000 a foot to replace. He thought he could make it. He didn't. The water got into his air intake about halfway across, and his engine choked dead in the middle of the flood. The 3 behind him made it 20 feet further before theirs went too. 1, 2, 3, like a string of firecrackers stalling out in the rain. 4 dead Harleys. 4 big men. Standing in waist-deep water in October, in Ohio, in a storm. It took them an hour to push the bikes out of the hollow and onto dry road. Then they started knocking on doors. The first house had a porch light on. A woman pulled the curtain back, looked at them, and shut the curtain. They knocked twice more. No answer. The second house, an old farmer in his doorway, shotgun resting against the wall behind him, said, "You boys keep moving," and shut the door. The third house didn't even open. They saw a face in the upstairs window. Then the face was gone. The fourth was a small auto repair shop, the kind where Diesel was sure a fellow mechanic would help. The owner was in the bay working on a Dodge. They could see him through the glass. They knocked. He looked up, looked at them, walked over to the front door, and turned the closed sign around. It wasn't even 2:30 in the afternoon. The fifth was a gas station. Reaper went inside alone, figured the others looked too scary in a group. He asked for a tow. The kid behind the counter said the pump was broken, the air was broken, the tow truck was broken. Then, while Reaper stood there shivering, a Ford F-150 pulled up and the kid hopped out and filled it without a word. The sixth was the worst. A nice ranch-style house with a swing set out back. They knocked. A woman opened it 3 inches with the chain on. They started to explain. She slammed it shut. 2 minutes later, they heard her on the phone through the open kitchen window. "There's 4 of them, big men, tattoos. I'm scared, officer." The sheriff's deputy came out 15 minutes later, checked all 4 IDs, ran them, found nothing, because there was nothing to find. These 4 men were a welder, a long-haul trucker, a contractor, and a medic who'd done 2 tours in Iraq. The deputy was respectful, apologetic even, but the last thing he said before driving away was, "Boys, this isn't a friendly stretch for folks who look like you. I'd keep pushing." So they pushed. They pushed those bikes another 2 miles in the rain, soaked through, shivering, hungry, blistered, Diesel coughing and going gray in the face, until they came around a long bend and saw a sign through the rain. Tate's Garage, Hattie's Pantry, established 1954. A warm, yellow light in the window. Diesel. 6'3", 280 pounds, a beard down to his chest, a tattoo of his daughter's name across his throat, leaned on the handlebars of his dead bike, looked at his 3 brothers, coughed once, hard. "Last try, fellas," he rasped. "If they say no, I'm done." Booker watched them come up the driveway and didn't move. 4 big men, soaked, leather vests black with rain, walking dead bikes 1 slow step at a time. The lead one was leaning on his handlebars like he couldn't stand up on his own anymore. For 1 full second, Booker didn't move. He saw the patches. He saw the beards. He saw the tattoos crawling up the necks of 2 of them. He heard, in his own head, every voice in town that had ever whispered about those types. He thought about the bank notice on his desk. He thought about what the regulars would say. He thought about Naomi. For 1 full second. Then the door behind him opened. Hattie stepped out onto the breezeway in her apron. She looked at the men. She looked at her husband. "Booker?" He turned. "Booker, bring them in." "Hattie, I see what they are. Bring 'em in." That was that. Booker pulled his coat off the hook and walked out into the rain. The 4 men stopped at the edge of the lot like they were afraid to come any closer until they were invited. "Park 'em under the overhang," Booker called. "Out of the wet, then come inside." The big one, Diesel, tried to say thank you and started coughing instead. The coughing didn't stop. The other 3 got under him before he went down. Booker moved fast for a 68-year-old man with arthritis. He got Diesel's other arm over his shoulder and walked him toward the pantry door. "What's your name, brother?" Diesel. Dalton." "Okay, Dalton. We're gonna get you inside." "Sir, heart. I got a heart thing from the army. Pills are in the saddlebag." "What kind? Beta blocker?" Booker looked over his shoulder at the one with the medic patch on his vest. "Son, get his pills. Now." "Yes, sir." The medic, Hammer, was already moving. Inside the pantry, Hattie had already lit the wood stove in the back room and was pulling quilts down off the shelf. She didn't even glance at the size of them. She walked straight up to Dalton, put one small hand on his cheek and said, "Oh, baby, you're freezing. Sit down before you fall down." Dalton, 6'3", 280 pounds of welder, sat down like a child. She had his vest off in 30 seconds, folded it carefully across the back of the chair the way you'd handle a man's uniform. Then his soaked t-shirt, wrapped him in a quilt she'd sewn the winter their granddaughter was born. "Where are those pills?" "Coming, ma'am," Hammer said, already at the door. She got one into him with sips of warm water, sponged his forehead with a clean rag, put 2 fingers to his neck and checked his pulse, slow and steady. "Booker, he's running hot. Got a fever coming." "I see it." She didn't ask who he was. She didn't ask what club. She didn't ask if he was dangerous. She talked to him like he was her son. "Dalton, baby, you got a wife at home?" "Yes, ma'am. And a daughter. Lily. She's 7. "Lily. Pretty name. You're gonna see her all right. You hold on to that. You picture her face." Dalton's eyes filled up. He nodded. Out in the main pantry, the other 3 were dripping all over Hattie's floor. 6'4" Tank with the neck tattoo, Reaper, 52, with a face like a granite quarry, Hammer, the medic, who'd already gotten the pills in. Hattie took one look at the 3 of them. You, sit, now." Tank sat. 6'4", sat down at her counter like a scolded 8-year-old. "You're soaked. You're scared for your friend. You can't help him better than I can, so you're gonna eat, and then you're gonna sit there and let me work. You understand me?" "Yes, ma'am," Tank said quietly. She slammed 3 plates down, fried chicken left from lunch, biscuits, gravy, sweet tea poured from a sweating glass pitcher. Tank bit into a biscuit. His hand was shaking. He bit it again. His jaw started to wobble. He put the biscuit down, wiped his enormous face with the back of an enormous hand. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, I haven't. This is..." "Eat your biscuit, son. Made it this morning. Made with worry. Tastes different." He ate it, tears running down into his beard the whole time. Reaper hadn't said a word. He was watching Hattie work, watching the way she moved, watching the way she touched Dalton's shoulder before she walked away from him, every time. Finally, Reaper said low, 5 doors said no to us today. One of them called the cops." Hattie didn't look up from the soup pot. Folks see what they want to see. "Ma'am, you didn't ask if we were dangerous. You're cold and you're hungry. That's all I needed to know." Reaper's eyes went wet. He turned his face toward the window so the other 2 wouldn't see. They saw anyway. Nobody said anything. In the back room, Booker was on the CB radio. Volunteer fire, bridge underwater, ambulance couldn't cross until at least 9:30. He explained the heart thing. The dispatcher said keep him warm, keep him still, keep him hydrated. Booker hung up, came out to the pantry. Hattie was already pulling clothes out of a paper bag from the back closet. "Booker's old work shirts, Hammer's about your size. These flannels, those'll fit 2 of you. Dry socks in the basket, basin under the sink. There's a curtain in the storeroom for privacy." She said it like a foreman. The 3 men moved without arguing. Hammer paused at the storeroom door, looked at Booker. "Sir, we didn't deserve this. 6 houses said no." Booker didn't answer right away. He was thinking about his daddy, about 1962, about a story Ezekiel used to tell, being turned away from a diner across the street from his own shop and what that did to a man's stomach. He just said, "Get out of those wet clothes, son." By 10:15, the bridge had cleared. The ambulance came. The paramedic checked Dalton's vitals and said quietly to Hattie, "Ma'am, those pills and keeping him warm? He could have coded tonight without you." Hattie just nodded. She squeezed Dalton's hand at the doorway. He held on. "Mrs. Tate?" "Yeah, baby." "What's your name? Your full name, I need to remember." "Hattie Tate. That's my husband, Booker." He repeated it 3 times under his breath as they wheeled him out. Like a prayer. Reaper pulled an envelope out of his vest. $2,000. Everything the 4 of them had on them. He pushed it across the counter. Hattie pushed it right back. "Honey, put that away. We helped 'cause you needed it. Money got nothing to do with it." Reaper's eyes filled up again. He didn't try to hide it this time. "Ma'am, nobody stops for us." "Y'all stopped." At the door, Hammer slid a plain card under the coffee tin where Hattie wouldn't see it until later. The bikes stayed in the lot, tarped. The men were gone by midnight. By 11, Booker and Hattie were sitting in the breezeway with 2 mugs of coffee, the way they had every night for 43 years. He said, "Think you'll be okay?" She said, "He'll be okay, sugar. He'll be okay." Neither of them knew yet that in 5 days the road outside their shop would be full of 60 Harleys. Sunday morning came up gray and cold, but the rain had stopped. Booker was out front by 6, surveying the damage. The storm had done what storms do. The gutter on the garage was hanging by 2 nails, more shingles missing off the pantry roof. The front sign had tilted another inch toward the road. He stood there in his work coat with a cup of coffee and looked at it all, and didn't feel much. He felt something else instead. He kept thinking about Dalton's eyes when he said, "Lily, she's 7. Hattie opened the pantry at 6:30 like every other Sunday for 43 years. 2 truckers came in for biscuits. One of them, Earl, drove for a feed company out of Akron, leaned an elbow on the counter and said, "Hattie, my buddy was driving past here last night around dark, said he saw bikers at your place. Big fellas, tattoos. You all right?" Hattie wiped a coffee ring. "One of them was sick." "Sick how?" "Sick enough." "Hattie, you be careful here. Folks like that, Earl. You want another biscuit or no?" Earl raised both hands. "Yes, ma'am." She refilled his coffee, didn't say another word about it. Out in the garage, Booker rolled Dalton's wrecked Harley further into the bay and pulled the tarp off. A beautiful machine, even ruined. Custom black paint with a hand-painted skull and wings on the tank. The frame was straight. The fork was tweaked but fixable. The engine was the question. He laid a hand flat on the saddle without meaning to. He'd done that to 1,000 bikes in his life. Listening with his palm, his daddy used to say. The pantry phone rang at 7:15. Hattie picked it up. "Tate's pantry? Mrs. Tate?" "Yes, baby. It's Hammer from last night. I'm calling from the hospital." She set the rag down. "How is he?" "He's gonna be okay, ma'am. Cardiac team caught everything. Said another 20 minutes without those meds and warmth, it could have gone bad. He's awake, asking about y'all." Hattie's eyes filled up. She turned her back to the truckers at the counter and walked into the storeroom with the phone. "You tell him we're glad. You tell him to rest." "I will, ma'am. And, Mrs. Tate, something else. Some folks might come by your place over the next few days. Just don't be scared." "What folks?" "Brothers, ma'am. Just brothers. Y'all did something last night. The kind of thing that doesn't stay quiet." She didn't know what that meant. She said, "Okay." She hung up. She walked out into the pantry. Booker was coming through the door from the garage side. Their eyes met. "Hattie?" "He's all right, baby. Praise God." She didn't tell him the rest yet, the part about brothers. She wasn't sure what it meant either. She tucked it in her apron pocket along with the plain card Hammer had slipped under the coffee tin the night before. The card had 2 words on it: Hammer, Iron Crows, MC, and a phone number. She didn't know what an Iron Crows MC was. She'd never heard of it. Neither had Booker. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that at that same moment, in a hospital room 60 miles south, Dalton was on the phone with a man called Bones, a man whose voice was like gravel running through a cement mixer. A man who, when Dalton finished telling the story, 5 doors, the cops, the old man in the rain, the old woman with the biscuits, said only 2 things. The first was, "God damn it, Dalton." The second was, "Don't move. Don't argue with the doctors. Let me make some calls." Then he hung up. By Sunday evening, 60 phones across 4 states would ring. By Monday morning, 60 men would start packing tools. But Booker and Hattie didn't know any of that yet. They thought it was over. Monday morning, Hattie opened up at 5 a.m. like she always did. There was a box on her porch. Plain brown cardboard, no tape, no label. She bent down and lifted the flap. Inside, a roll of high-grade electrical tape, 2 Napa oil filters in original packaging, a fresh tube of brake cleaner, a bag of clean shop rags. About $50 worth of supplies. No note, no card. She carried it inside and put it on the counter, stood there a minute looking at it. Then she went and got Booker. "Somebody left this on the porch." "Who'd leave this?" "I don't know, baby. Customer, maybe? Somebody dropping off they couldn't pay for last time? Maybe." He went back to the garage, but she didn't put the box away. She left it sitting on the counter where she could see it. She looked at it 3 more times before lunch. Monday evening, 2 men she'd never seen pulled into the lot in a pickup. They came inside, polite, no eye contact problems, ordered 3 sandwiches and 2 coffees, asked her how long the pantry had been there. One of them said, "Mind if I get a picture of the sign? My wife collects pictures of old roadside signs." Hattie said, "Sure." He took 2 photos. They left a $50 tip on a $12 order. She showed Booker the bills later. He said, "Some folks are just generous." She said, but she put the 50 in a separate envelope. Tuesday morning, the morning the bank notice came due, Booker drove up to Russ's gas station for milk. He stopped in front of the corkboard by the door, the one he'd walked past 100 times. The faded flyer was still there. Iron Crows MC, Annual Toy Run, skull with crow's wings. The same logo from Dalton's gas tank. This time he read the small print. Annual Toy Run for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. The Iron Crows MC has donated over $200,000 since 1996. He stood there a long time. Russ came over with the milk. "That flyer's been there forever. Probably some kind of scam." Booker didn't answer. Walked out. Tuesday afternoon, a reporter called. "Sir, I'd like to talk about..." He hung up, pulled the curtain. Tuesday night, 11:46 p.m. Hattie's phone buzzed on the kitchen table. She picked it up, squinted at the screen. The text was from Hammer. "Mrs. T, open at 6 tomorrow morning, please. Got some brothers coming through. Don't be scared. They look worse than they are." She read it twice, walked into the bedroom, showed it to Booker. He read it again. "How many brothers?" "Don't say." "They look worse than they are." She looked at the box of supplies on the counter through the open door, then at her husband. "Booker, we're gonna need a bigger pot of coffee." At 5:58 Wednesday morning, Hattie Tate brewed 3 pots of coffee instead of 1. By 6:15, she'd understand why. Booker was outside dragging the trash can to the side of the lot. He kept glancing toward the highway every 2 minutes. He didn't say it, but he was nervous. He'd brought the bank notice in from the desk and folded it into his back pocket like a man going to court. The mist hung low across Route 9. The sky was the color of an old nickel. The lot was empty. Then he heard it. A low rumble, far off, coming from the south. Then more of it. Then more on top of that. Then the sound stopped being engines and started being something else. A wall. A weather system coming up the road. Booker set down the trash can. Hattie stepped out of the pantry doorway, dish towel still in her hands, and walked to the edge of the breezeway. The mist broke. 60 Harleys. 60. Coming up Route 9 in tight formation, 2 and 2, like a parade nobody had told the town about. Behind the bikes, 3 pickup trucks loaded with toolboxes, a flatbed stacked with lumber, shingles, drywall, paint cans. 2 contractor vans, one marked Brooks Construction, the other Anderson Roofing. A food truck, a man with a camera and a leather vest. They pulled into the lot in formation, engines idled. Then, on a hand signal nobody saw given, every engine cut at once. Silence dropped on the property like a blanket. Booker did not move. 60 bearded men in leather vests stood in his driveway. 60 pairs of boots on his gravel. 60 patches with crows and skulls and chapter rockers and mom tattoos and forearms thick as fence posts. Every single thing Glenboro had ever whispered about those people was standing in his lot at 6 a.m. The lead rider swung off his Harley. Bald, silver beard down to his sternum, dark sunglasses on even though the sun wasn't up yet. The P rocker on the back of his cut, a tattoo of a crow climbing up the side of his neck. He walked across the gravel one heavy step at a time and stopped in front of Booker. He stuck out a hand the size of a Bible. Mom tattooed across the knuckles. "You Booker Tate?" "Yes, sir." "Bones Harrison Sutton, Vice President, Iron Crows, MC, Columbus Chapter. You the sumbitch pulled Diesel out of that storm Saturday?" "Yes, sir." "Then shake my hand, brother, before I get emotional and embarrass the hell out of myself in front of 60 grown men." Booker shook it. Bones's grip was iron. He held it 3 seconds longer than a handshake, pulled back, coughed hard. Damn allergies. He turned to the lot. His voice came out like a parade ground sergeant. "All right. Y'all know why we're here. Tools out, mouths shut, work fast. We got till sundown, and nobody scares Mrs. Tate's customers. Park your bikes around back. Take off your bandanas if she asks. We're guests here. Act like it." The whole convoy started moving like one organism. Tarps coming off, ladders going up. Tank, 6'4", gently helping Dalton out of the passenger seat of the lead pickup. Dalton's leg in a walking cast, grinning like a kid on his birthday. Hattie walked down off the breezeway slow, one hand to her mouth. Dalton hobbled toward her on the crutch. This man, 280 pounds, beard, tattoo of his daughter's name on his throat. The man Glenboro would cross the road to avoid. He stopped 2 feet from Hattie and bent his head down. "Mrs. Tate?" "Diesel." "Ma'am, my daughter's name is Lily. She just turned 7 last month. Saturday night, I was supposed to leave her without a daddy. You gave her her daddy back." He started to cry, right there, in front of 60 men. Hattie pulled the giant into her shoulder and held on. He sobbed once into her apron, hard, raw, the kind of cry that comes out of a man who has not let himself cry in a long, long time. The 60 men in the lot suddenly found their tools very interesting. Bones stood next to Booker watching, took the sunglasses off. His eyes were red. "That's the toughest sumbitch I've ever known, Mr. Tate. 2 tours overseas. Killed men. Hasn't cried since his mama died in 2003. Y'all broke him in the best way a man can be broken." Booker couldn't speak. He just stared at his wife and the giant in her arms. Bones cleared his throat. "Look, I ain't gonna make a speech. Hate speeches. But my brother called me Sunday morning from a hospital bed. Said 5 doors said no to him that day. Said the cops came, said two old folks on Route 9 took one look at four bikers in the rain and didn't even hesitate. Said y'all got nothing, and the wife shoved $2,000 back across the counter. He paused, spoke quieter. Mr. Tate, folks look at us. They see the patches and the beards and they assume we deal drugs. They assume we beat our wives. They assume we're trash. 5 doors proved 'em right Saturday by leaving my brother to die. Y'all didn't assume. Y'all just opened the goddamn door. Behind him, men were already on ladders, roofing nails coming out of bags. Dalton, leaning on his crutch beside Hattie, found his voice. Mr. Tate, Reaper over there owns Brooks Construction. He's donating the labor and the materials, top to bottom, garage and pantry. Tank's daddy owns Anderson Roofing. He's doing your roof, and he's doing your house roof in the back. Hattie covered her face. She had not told a single soul that the bedroom roof leaked. Booker found his voice, hoarse. Sir, we just helped a man. Bones turned on him hard. You helped a man everybody else walked away from. Don't you ever say just to me again, Mr. Tate. You hear? Yes, sir. Bones. Bones. The big man clapped a hand on Booker's shoulder, then softer. Mrs. Tate, where's the damn coffee? Inside, Bones. He walked toward the pantry. The work began. The work didn't stop for 11 weeks. That first Wednesday alone, 60 men ripped out the rotten siding on the garage, hauled away a dumpster of broken shingles, and laid a fresh concrete pad in front of both buildings before sundown. By the second weekend, Reaper's crew had the garage stripped down to the studs and was rebuilding it from the inside out. A modern hydraulic lift went in, donated by a club member who owned a parts warehouse 2 counties over. New compressor, new lighting, new benches. And every old tool Ezekiel Tate had hung on that back wall in 1954. Every wrench, every spanner, every soldering iron got moved temporarily, photographed, and rehung in exactly the same spot when the wall went back up. Bones had given the order. Nobody touches the daddy's wall. The pantry got the same treatment. 6 new booths, a real coffee station, a new griddle big enough to feed a small army donated by a member who owned a restaurant supply company in Cleveland. The breezeway between the 2 buildings was rebuilt with a covered roof and outdoor seating. Hattie had once said years ago that she'd always wanted a little porch garden. By week 6, there was one. 3 raised beds, 2 rose bushes, a little wooden bench. Nobody told her she'd mentioned it once. They'd just listened. Out back, Tank's daddy's roofing crew did the house in 2 days. 3 plumbers from the club fixed every pipe. A window and glass member from Akron replaced the bedroom window Hattie had patched with cardboard 6 winters ago. The buckets came up out of the bedroom floor and went out to the curb. Hattie cried when she saw them sitting there next to the trash bin. 40 club members were working mechanics in their day jobs. Body shop owners, diesel guys, custom builders. They showed up on the second weekend in shifts and worked alongside Booker on every car on his backlog list. Mrs. Hollister's transmission, the Peterson kid's truck, an old farmer's combine clutch that had been sitting in the lot for 3 months. Booker stood in the middle of all of it, teaching the younger members his daddy's old tricks. He had this way of feeling for a bad bearing through a screwdriver against your ear, like a doctor with a stethoscope. Watch. On day 6, Booker took a break and sat on a milk crate behind the garage with a cup of coffee. An older man came around the corner with 2 cups. Mid-70s, leathery face. A vest covered in patches that went back to Vietnam. He sat on the other crate without asking. Handed Booker one of the cups. They drank for a minute. Didn't talk. Then the old man said quiet, "My daddy ran a body shop in Mansfield. 68. A black mechanic walked in looking for work. Best hands my old man ever saw, he told me 30 years later. told the man he didn't have nothing for him. He took a long sip, set the cup down. My daddy died in '96. The one thing he said sorry for. Just that one, out loud, to nobody, in a hospital bed, 2 days before he went. The old man stood up slow. Folks look at this vest, Mr. Tate, and they see a scary white biker. Folks look at you, they see what their granddaddy taught 'em to see. 60 of us riding down here this week. Some of us, this is a couple generations late, from both sides. Name's Earl. They call me Preacher. He walked back toward the work. Booker sat there a long time. He didn't tell Hattie that night. He told her 2 weeks later, in bed, in the dark, after a long quiet. She just took his hand and didn't say anything. End of week 3, the renovation was in full swing. Bones came up the breezeway and dropped a manila folder on the table where Booker was eating lunch. One more thing. Brothers voted. Booker opened it. A scholarship letter. The Iron Crows MC Trade and Engineering Fund. Recipient, Naomi Tate, Purdue University, College of Engineering. 4 years, tuition, books, housing, stipend. Funded by member contributions. Total, $98,000. Booker stared at the paper. He put his sandwich down. His eyes filled up. Tears just running down his face into his coffee. Bones? Don't go soft on me, Tate. Bones, we can't sign the damn paper. On one condition. Bones rolled his eyes. What? Make it permanent, every year. One scholarship for a kid from a county like this one. Black, white, brown, don't matter. Trade school, engineering, culinary, like my Hattie. One rule. They gotta do one free job every year for somebody who can't pay. Forever. Bones stared at him for a long moment, pulled the pen out of his vest pocket, plicked it, set it down on the table. You're a pain in the ass, you know that? Yes, sir. Done. I'll bully the board into it Monday. Sign. Booker signed. Bones clapped him on the back hard enough to make him cough. Reopening day was a Sunday. 11 weeks after the storm, the whole town came. Banners across the breezeway, a red ribbon, the mayor giving a speech, 80 Iron Crows in full formation, bikes lined up like a military parade. Naomi cut the ribbon. Hattie cried. Booker shook hands until he couldn't feel his arm. At the end of it, Dalton hobbled up to Hattie holding a small framed photograph. He handed it to her without a word. It was a child's drawing. Crayon. A man with a beard, a woman with an apron, a house with a heart on the roof. Across the bottom, in a 7-year-old's careful printing, "Thank you for saving my daddy. Love, Lily." Hattie hung it behind the diner counter that same afternoon. It is still there. The story didn't stay local. By the Tuesday after reopening, a regional paper out of Columbus ran a front-page photo of Hattie hugging Dalton in the breezeway. The headline was, "6 doors said no, the 7th said yes." By Friday, it was on the wire. By the following Monday, a video clip of Bones's speech in the lot, taken by the photographer in the leather vest who'd ridden up with the convoy, was up to 8 million views online. The Iron Crows MC's social media account, which Booker had never heard of, had 180,000 followers. By the end of the month, it had 400,000. People left comments in every language. A woman in Glasgow wrote, "I am crying on a bus." Saturdays on Route 9 stopped looking like Saturdays on Route 9. By the 3rd weekend after reopening, the lot was full from sunup. Bikers from 4 states stopped in to shake Booker's hand. Couples drove down from Cleveland just to eat in Hattie's diner. Truckers rerouted their hauls through Glenboro to pick up a mason jar of her sweet tea for the road. By 6 months in, Booker had a 4-week wait list for any major repair. He hired his first apprentice in 20 years. A young man named Devin Wilson, 22, black, drove down from 2 counties over after seeing the news, knocked on the bay door and said, "Mr. Tate, I'd like to learn from you." Booker hired him before lunch. Hattie hired 2 single mothers from the trailer park down the road, paid them above minimum, sent them home every night with whatever was left in the warming tray. One of them, a woman named Cheyenne, had been about to put her kids in her sister's spare room because rent was due. She didn't have to. The town shifted, slowly, but it shifted. The same regulars who'd whispered about those types 2 months ago now stopped in on Saturdays to gawk at the Harleys lined up in the new lot. The mayor of Glenboro showed up at a town council meeting and called the whole thing the Iron Crow's tourism boom. The hardware store reopened. The diner across the highway hired 3 new staff. Russ at the gas station took down the probably some kind of scam face he used to make when the toy run flyer came up, and quietly put a donation jar on his counter. Up at Purdue, Naomi started her freshman year in the College of Engineering. She hung her great-grandfather Ezekiel's old work apron on the wall of her dorm room. Next to it, she pinned an Iron Crow's patch Dalton had mailed her in a manila envelope with a handwritten note. Honorary member. Lifetime. Diesel. She FaceTimed home every Sunday after church. Hattie always held the phone. Booker always waved from behind a transmission. A year after the storm, the first official Iron Crow's MC Trade and Engineering Scholarship was awarded to a 19-year-old single mother named Tasha Brooks, studying diesel mechanics at the community college. 2 months later, a second scholarship went to an 18-year-old named Marisol Garcia, who wanted to be a chef. Booker handed them their certificates at the diner. Hattie sent them home with peach pies and 1 line each, the same line for both girls. Now go, baby. And don't forget the rule. A bronze plaque went up by the front door of the new building. Bones had paid for it himself. It read, "This place stayed open because 2 people answered the door when no one else would." The Iron Crows. MC, with gratitude, forever. Earl Mason, preacher, drove down from Mansfield 1 Saturday a month. He'd buy an oil change he didn't need and a slice of pie he did. He and Booker never said much to each other across the lot, just nodded. Hattie watched it from her counter and knew exactly what was being said in those nods. Dalton brought his daughter Lily down on weekends. She'd sit on a milk crate in the bay watching Booker work, asking him 1,000 questions, calling him Granddaddy Tate. One Sunday, she fell asleep with her cheek on a tire, and Booker carried her into the pantry so Hattie could put her down on the backroom cot. Hattie stood looking at her for a long minute before she covered her with the same quilt she'd wrapped Dalton in on the worst night of his life. She didn't say anything. She just smiled. 1 year after the storm, on a foggy October morning, a stranger pulled into Tate's garage. It was 5:20 in the morning. The sun wasn't up yet. Booker, 69 now, was already in the bay with a pot of coffee on the workbench. Hattie's biscuits were going in the new oven next door. The fog was thick on Route 9, the kind that swallows headlights at 50 feet. A rusted sedan limped into the lot, steam coming off the hood. The driver, a young woman, early 20s, got out shaking. Thrift store blazer, cheap flats, eyes puffy from crying. She walked toward the bay, hands trembling, holding a folded piece of paper. "Sir, I don't have any money. I have a job interview in Columbus in 2 hours. It's a real one. The first real one. Please, is there any way?" Booker held up a hand, gentle, the same hand he'd held up to a man called Diesel in the rain 1 year before. "Pop the hood, sweetheart." Hattie appeared in the breezeway doorway with her dish towel, took one look at the girl. "Honey, when's the last time you ate?" The girl couldn't answer. Hattie nodded once. "Come sit at the counter. Biscuits coming up, coffee's on. We'll feed you while he works." 40 minutes later, the car was running. Tightened hose, a belt off Booker's scrap pile, topped off everything that was empty. The girl had eaten 2 biscuits with sausage gravy and drunk a cup of coffee. Hattie had packed her a brown paper bag. 2 more biscuits, an apple, a hard-boiled egg. You eat the egg before the interview, baby. Protein helps your nerves. The girl tried to leave her phone on the counter as collateral. Booker pressed something into her palm instead. A business card. The new Tate's Garage logo on one side. On the other side, in his own handwriting, "You don't owe us. Pass it on someday." She drove off into the fog. They watched the taillights disappear. Naomi was home for fall break. She was in the bay rebuilding a transmission. She looked up from the parts spread out on the floor.
"Granddaddy, Grandma, you didn't charge her anything?"
Hattie wiped her hands on her apron.
"Baby, a year ago, 60 men everybody else was scared of came down this road to save us. You think we charged that girl for a belt and a biscuit?"
Booker chuckled. Naomi smiled, went back to her transmission. Somewhere out on Route 9, faint through the fog, came the sound of Harleys. Saturday riders, on their way down. The fog burned off by 9 that morning. Booker and Hattie sat in the breezeway with 2 mugs of coffee, the way they had every morning for 44 years now. The bronze plaque caught the early sun behind them. Somewhere down Route 9, a single Harley rode by and the rider tapped his horn twice in greeting. Hattie clinked her mug against her husband's. "Morning, sugar." "Morning, baby."
6 dogs said no, the 7 said yes, and that's one yes from a 68-year-old black mechanic and a wife who didn't flick at 4 shop strangers on her porch. Changed everything. The shop, the town. You know what gets me about Booker and hesitate? They helped because the bikers needed help. That's it. That's the whole thing. And we forget how rare that is. 5 other people saw 4 men in a storm and decided their fear of how somebody looks was bigger than a man's heart attack. One of them called the cops on them. Haiti opened her door anyway. She called Dalton baby before she knew his last name. She fed Tang a biscuit while he cried into his bed. She didn't ask what club. She just asked, "When's the last time you ate?" And honestly, I had to ask myself, would I have opened that door? 4 big men, leather vests, nail tattoos, knocking in the ring. 5 neighbors already said no. Tell me the truth in the comments, not the answer that makes you look good. The real one. Would you have opened the door? If their story moved you, drop a heart in the comments, hit subscribe so the next one finds you, and share this with somebody who's forgotten that quiet garden still exists. Because somewhere on the road tonight, somebody's in knocking. Be the 7th door.